Hello there, welcome to a new video. Today we are doing a Brainstorm a New Character with me vlog. If you're new here, my name is Marta. I'm an aspiring fantasy author currently working on the second book of her debut trilogy Project Sight. And you might be wondering at this point, why are we brainstorming a new character if you're working on the second book of a series? And that would be a very good question. You see, the first book in the series has 4 point of view characters, while the second book has 5. Today we are going to be working on brainstorming out that 5th character. Her name is Rin and this is her character profile, which as you can see, it is extremely empty. I know close to nothing about this character, and that really showed when I was rereading the first draft. Rin was a bit of a last minute addition to the second book. I was brainstorming the first chapter and trying to figure out what point of view character would work best in order to show this big reveal in the most satisfying way possible. And the answer was Rin. So I added her into the book and gave her a little bit of plot, but I think I may have forgotten to give her personality in the process. She is extremely bland, her voice feels very much like Lisa's, who is my only other female point of view character in book 1, and there's just nothing special about her at the minute. However, since I have some existing plot lines attached to her character, I think what's gonna make the most sense for her is to work my way backwards. I know what her situation is at the start of the second book, and I know what her situation is at the end of the second book. So what type of person would make the decisions that she makes to go from point A to point B? And what sort of backstory would she need to have to be able to have those personality traits to make those decisions? I guess there's only one way to find out. So let's start with the easy bit, which is her age. I know what her rank is, and I know that there's another character with a similar rank that is in his mid-30s, but that character has an unfair advantage, so I kinda see Rin as being a little bit older than him. So I'm thinking maybe like 38 is a good number for her. I have no idea what her biggest fear is or her biggest hope off the top of my head. I do know... do I know this? Maybe let's leave this empty for now. Let's think about her personality first. I do know from what I've written that she is like a little bit superstitious, but not superstitious in a religious way or even in a existing traditions way. She's more superstitious in the sense of believing in her own little intricacies and habits. If she does things one way once and they work, she's gonna keep doing it the same way. So I think a good way to phrase this is by saying that she believes in her own little rituals. She's also very independent and really values that independence. One of the key decisions she takes in the book is not wanting to be a burden to others. And she makes the decision to do something that's scary and new and difficult over being a burden to her family. One aspect of her personality which was coming across when I was rereading the first draft and that I'm not sure if I want to keep is not being certain in her own leadership abilities. And I think that works on some level. She has recently in book 1 been through a lot of really tough stuff. She has taken some decisions that have put her team in danger, and it makes sense for her to be self-doubting herself a little bit. But I also feel like doing that with this character might make her feel too similar to Lisa, and I want them to be very distinct from each other. So I think while it might be okay for her to have a little blip in her confidence as she's making these decisions that are going to throw her into a completely new situation, I don't want her to be doubting her own leadership abilities. Now, I think since I'm trying to avoid spoilers, I'm going to brainstorm out her backstory and character arc off camera, but I'll be back to fill you in a little bit. Okay, so I've got a backstory now that I'm really happy about. I'm not gonna show you everything I wrote because some of it is spoilery, but the main gist of it is she doesn't want to be a burden because her mother was a burden to her when she was ill when Rin was growing up. And while that was going on, she was working a really crappy little job at a kitchen, not even as a cook, but just like washing dishes and stuff. So her biggest fear is having to go back to that situation. Her biggest hope, which is sort of like a bit of a guilty secret hope for her, is surpassing her 2 brothers who left her being stuck caring after their mother and went off to do their own thing while she was left behind. And she basically properly starts living her life with a 3-year disadvantage compared to her brothers. So she's trying to prove that even despite them leaving her behind and not offering to take that responsibility from her, not helping, even though it should have been a shared responsibility, she can still make it and she can still surpass them. And I think this backstory works really well as a good motivation for some of the things I'm going to be throwing at this character. And it also just, some of the bits that are going to be coming up are just perfect for her to be thinking back about this. There's going to be some like circle things going on. I'm very pleased with this. It took a while for me to come up with something that I actually like, and I really like this. I think it's going to work really well. I'm still not sure about the key traits of their voice. I think that's something I'm going to be filling in once I have some more samples of what writing in her voice feels like. However, I do want to work on her physical appearance. So in my head, because I don't think I've ever described Rin in any of the books in this trilogy, but in my head she's always had like really dark, sort of almost black hair, with bangs and sort of like short, like slightly above shoulder length. I also feel like she would take full advantage of being able to be out in the sun whenever she wants, after she no longer has to work in a kitchen all day. So I feel like she would be like a little bit tanned, a little bit like maybe even freckly, I'm not sure. I also think I see her as like strong but not bulky. So she has that muscle mass, but she's not bulking for the sake of it. She has a more practical body shape, where her key motivation with her training would be a lot more on technique and on being able to fight effectively as opposed to being able to look strong. So I think we're gonna take these like couple of attributes and see if I can replace this very ugly looking profile picture with something nice. One of the first things I try to think about when designing a character is shape language. If you're not familiar with this, it's a principle used when designing characters for visual mediums in order to create an emotional response in the viewer based on shapes we're familiar with and our associations with them. For example, my main character Lisa is soft, kind and approachable, so I used circular shape language when I was designing her. You can see this in the shape of her face, but also in the shape of some of her features. Her round little button nose, curvy ears, and the round shapes of her locks framing her face. A character like Thread, who is sturdy, strong and stubborn, would use square shape language. And the devious character like Ryan, who is unpredictable and always working from the shadows, would use triangular shape language. So what kind of language do we want to use for Rin? Is she solid and sturdy, soft, approachable and changeable, or sharp, dangerous and unpredictable? As with most characters that are believable and three-dimensional, she is going to have traits in all three of these categories, but in what balance? I think her strength is what I want to highlight the most, so I'm keeping her shape language as rectangular as possible. She is definitely not harmless, but she is approachable and she is changeable, so she could have some circular features. She's going to be showing off her adaptability quite a bit in this book, and I'm going to be throwing a pretty big change in circumstances at her soon. However, I am trying to stay away from circles to have as much contrast against Lisa as possible, so we're going to minimize her circle as much as we can. And she's also keeping a couple of secrets of her own, so a few triangles in her design wouldn't hurt. While shape language is great for a fun little exercise like this, it's obviously not something that's going to transfer all that well into the book in and of itself. I'm not going to go in there and start describing Rin by saying she has a face that leans towards a rectangle with some curves that showcase that she is still kind to those around her, despite having a hard and angular outlook at life. Nor that her nose resembles an upside-down triangle to showcase that there's more to her than meets the eye and that she's good at carrying secrets. That would make for some pretty odd character description, but it's still a good starting point for me to think about these things while I'm constructing her face. I'm not very good at visualizing what I write in my head, and people are one of the hardest things for me to visualize. My characters are usually effectively faceless until I sit down to draw them, and starting from a couple of constraints set by shape language gives me something to start from that I can then start tweaking until it feels right. Even if I can't always visualize my characters in my head when I'm writing them, I have a pretty good idea of what they don't look like. And it's not like I can visualize what they don't look like either, it's more of a know it when you see it sort of thing. It can take a lot of tweaking for me to have something in front of me that doesn't serve that sense of, no, that's not her. And I'm not sure that I'm quite on the nose yet for Rin, pun not intended. Something still doesn't feel quite right with her, but that little feeling is telling me that I'm getting close, and maybe I'll figure out what direction to tweak her in another day. For now, it's certainly close enough for me to have something to work from for the next draft. So I finished my character art. This is Rin. I love her. She is so cute. I still think she looks maybe like a little bit young and a little bit too soft compared to what she was in my head. But it's a work in progress. I think she's good enough for now. And of course now we get to do the most satisfying part of the character brainstorming process, which is adding her profile picture into her character sheet. So let me do that now. So more actions, and it's replace image. And there she is. Yeah, looking back at her on there, she definitely looks too soft, but that's alright. I think that image works really well with my other characters, and considering those other character profiles were done in like 2022, and I managed to pull off the same style, even though it's been so long since I've drawn in that style, I'm really pleased with how like cohesive they look together. It doesn't look like it's been 3 years between one and the other. Which actually thinking about may just mean that my art hasn't improved in 3 years. Let's not think about that. Thank you so much for watching if you've made it this far. I would love to know if you've ever made character art for your own characters, or if you haven't, if you do anything else like face claim type things, anything that you do to help you visualize your characters in your head better. And I will see you very soon with another video. Bye bye.